Adam Conover comes on to Joe Rogan. Many people believe that this is the worst Joe Rogan guest to ever appear on the show. Today we're going to look at his claims that there's no such thing as
the idea of the alpha male doesn't exist in humans.
How women perceive males. Is this grounded in biology or science at all? Adam claims no.
Talk to any anthropologist, any biologist, any sociologist, right? And be like, are humans organized in a social relationship where there's alphas and betas? They'll be like, no, what are you talking about? This is an unscientific idea.
Alpha, beta, sigma males are not biological terms. Fine, but Adam takes it a step further.
But it is true that women are hardwired to be attracted to confident, athletic men.
I don't know if I agree with that. But
really?
Yeah.
He genuinely believes that women do not prefer certain body shapes or guys that are in shape.
In the context of like people who are, oh, my type is I like alphas, right? Well, there's no such thing actually, humans are you're dominant in some situations, not in others, right? It's an overly simplistic way of looking at human relationships.
Joe points this out that these are not biological terms, fair enough, but let's look at the underlying patterns.
Well, let's take away the words.
Yeah.
They're clearly men who are more aggressive and athletic and dominant and more confident, and then men who are introverted and shy and more nervous and anxious. And there's a scale.
In some situations.
There are certain patterns of behavior and traits which women on average find more attractive, not just in some situations.
Social situations.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about, right?
In social, but your social situation could change based on what situation you're in.
That's why a base level of competency is desirable in order to be able to meet these changing circumstances. And Joe starts to point this idea out.
You know what I mean?
They could, but like an athletic, confident male is always going to be an athletic, confident male, and an introverted, anxious male who has problems with social anxiety is going to be the same. That's who that person is.
I don't think so necessarily. But so when we're talking about alphas, right? Mm-hmm. In animals, what is that? It's a social hierarchy, right?
In animals. So let's take away that word.
And Adam tries to go back to just attacking the words alpha, beta. Okay, put that aside though. Let's talk about the underlying patterns here.
I mean, what people are using to describe when they're saying alphas and betas, they're saying like confident, strong, secure people and people that are anxious and not confident.
So if you're trying to say, hey, like it's good to be confident, it's not so great to be anxious. Like that's fine, right? Mm-hmm. But when people talk about alpha males and beta males, right, they're specifically bringing in the language of like evolution, of biology, of zoology, of evolutionary psychology, and they'll start saying stuff like, well, there's alphas and there's betas, and women are hardwired to be attracted to the alpha, because that's what it's like in nature. Like they'll be using that language, right? And so what we're pointing out is that's not scientific.
I'm not sure how you could claim that it's not possible for science to explain why there are certain traits which would be more desirable for both evolutionary reasons and psychological reasons.
Right.
It's not scientific, but it is true that women are hardwired to be attracted to confident, athletic men.
I don't know if I agree with that.
And this is where it just kind of goes off the rails here. It's like, just like, wait, what?
But
really?
Yeah.
You don't think that women look at like pro athletes and like big, strong, athletic men, and you don't think they're drawn to that for evolutionary reasons?
No, I don't actually.
Adam sounds like someone who genuinely does not want this to be true, because it's almost like that means that there's something that he needs to live up to. And it's easier not to have to live up to that. It's easier to think that none of this is true. And I see this often in people.
I think that.
Okay, do you think that men are drawn to women with small waists and big hips and large breasts for evolutionary reasons?
I think that's an easy. I think what that is that's an easy intuition to come to if you're like looking at the way people behave, right? But one of the things about evolutionary psychology is it's the most common mistake to look at the way that people do behave and say the reason we behave that way is because evolution says that's the best way, right? That's their argument. For instance, I'll give you an example. That's the argument arguments like that were used, for instance, to justify slavery.
I've seen people do this before, where if you start debating objective scientific explanations, people claim, well, that's a dangerous game to play because that was used to justify slavery. It's like
that, like, oh, because whites and blacks have this hierarchical relationship in American society, that's the way it was intended. That's how nature intended it to be, right? But we can't.
That's a giant leap.
We can't
We're just
make
talking
that a
about like
leap.
the shapes of bodies. Like men universally are attracted to a certain shape of bodies. There's men that are attracted to different ones, and
I don't think men are universally attracted to the same
People vary,
body.
but that hourglass shape has been throughout time something that men are attracted to.
I think that hourglass shape is something throughout our recent cultural memory that we tell each other that men are attracted to, right? That's what we're told from an early age to this is the sort of women that men are attracted to, and so a lot of men end up adopting that, right?
why do people find Margot Robbie attractive, for example? Adam would probably argue, do you only find Margot Robbie attractive because you've been told from an early age that that's what attractive is? I'm not sure about that.
But I don't think that deep down that's how men naturally are.
Really?
Yeah, I read this.
That doesn't make any sense to me. That's so non-intuitive.
But I'm all about things that are non-intuitive.
Where do you think it started? Where do you think this narrative of men being attracted to the woman with large breasts and a small waist and a big ass, where do you think that started? Because this is like evolutionary biology is pretty much settled on the idea that the reason why is the large hips would indicate that the woman would be easier to give birth. Having large breasts and a large ass would indicate that she has she's fertile, and then she has ample fat storage in the right places.
Yes, if you are grossly overweight, that indicates many things to the person. A certain level of discipline, the likelihood of what your offspring will be like, the likelihood that they will go on to reproduce. It's not just, oh, because I've been conditioned by society to not like overweight.
There's all these like evolutionary biology reasons why people are attracted to certain things. Why a woman would be attracted to a tall, muscular, handsome man, good genetics, very strong and confident, can take care of her. All these things are based on evolutionary biology. So I don't understand why you think these are learned sort of cultural artifacts.
So
And you can understand why many people would want it to be that way because, well, then you don't have to feel bad about not taking care of yourself. And this is all from postmodern thinking. That fits into the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that lets you compare perspectives on any topic with full transparency on the political bias, financial incentives, and credibility behind the headlines. Whatever the debate shaping our lives is, the narratives we hear can shape what we think before we've even had a chance to question it. Critical thinking is all about thinking for oneself to navigate the stories and the patterns that make up the world. We see the differences in these stories through the lens of the media. Follow your favorite topics or simply paste any article link in their search bar to find the full coverage on heated issues and swipe between perspectives to form your own opinion based on all the facts. Ground News was designed to give you back control over your thoughts. That's why they created their blind spot feed, one of the most important things to check before trying to have constructive dialogue with people who think differently than you. Go to ground.news/Smith or scan the QR code on the screen. Viewers get the top tier Vantage plan for just $5 a month. So it's a handy tool. How best to navigate those stories, that's where Ground News comes in. According to him, we only find things attractive because we've been told that those things are attractive. A woman walks by you on the street and you feel attraction. It's not a voluntary response, it's a subconscious response, and it happens very quickly.
Take a look at these two faces. Which one do you find more attractive? Most of you would probably choose this one.
We're responding to specific indicators, and mathematicians have been exploring this idea for a long time, and there are claims that the golden ratio factors into this, which is really interesting.
There are three components that impact the attractiveness of a face. The first element is the academic beauty of a face, which measures the physical attractiveness of a face based on scientific research.
My question is, this is an assumption that we, the public, make about how evolutionary biology works, right?
Well, it's more of a thing that we sort of agree on.
Well, we as the, like, there's an idea among the public that this is true. I don't know if it's a scientific idea.
You might want to figure that out before claiming that it's not.
I've had conversations with evolutionary biologists who explain the reason why men are attracted to certain shapes and why women are attracted to certain shapes. This is sort of, I mean, this is science. I mean, in a way, the reason why they're attracted to tall men that are muscular and confident is because that is what's always saved you throughout history. I mean, it totally makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, just because it makes the point of our show, right, is that just because something makes intuitive sense doesn't mean that it's necessarily true, right?
Scientists have been trying to explore this idea for a very long time, as have artists, all the way back from the Renaissance, the Italian Renaissance, when all of art changed. That which cannot otherwise be explained, in this case, express what is beauty. The David, the masculine shape, tap into this very code embedded within nature.
But don't you think that in this case, that this is a varied argument? Like, I don't think that's something that you can dismiss.
I don't dismiss it, but I don't assume the truth of it simply because that's what, everybody agrees upon, right?
That's also not a reason to discount all the patterns and the evidence of your own eyes.
If you ask girls, like, what are you into? And you say, are you into tall, muscular, confident men who are also nice to you? Jesus Christ, it's going to be off the charts. It's going to be like most of them.
I'm really not sure that's the case.
Really?
Wow, this guy really does not want this to be true. It almost sounds like someone who just hasn't had much luck in that area and is overly invested in this topic.
You had like a survey of women, and if the men were equally kind and equally intelligent and friendly, you don't think that more women would be sexually attracted to these tall, handsome men with great bodies?
If you're a woman watching this, leave a comment below. Is this guy full of crap, or is he onto something?
Here's something that I was really influenced by. What
do you think of that, what I just said, though?
And Joe calls him back onto topic. He's like, no, don't get away from this. Like,
that doesn't make sense to you, that women would be attracted to someone who's fit?
Look, I mean, it's a hypothetical, right? Like, certainly athleticism, right, is something that is attractive, right? That's something that many people find attractive, right? Not everybody finds that attractive.
This takes effort to evade acknowledging these things.
And I don't think that we can necessarily reason backwards to a specific evolutionary relationship, right? Because the truth of what those evolutionary relationships are is like often a lot more complicated than, our immediate intuition about it. And what we're specifically pushing back against in that segment is like the really sort of unscientific, use
of alpha and beta.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, you've got people, just on internet forums, like sort of doing amateur pseudoscience, right? Saying like, this is how the relationships between men and women are like designed evolutionarily. And we were just pointing out on a very, very simple level, like the alpha and beta social hierarchy theory, right? That like humans are organized in a social hierarchy and alphas are above betas. Not true.
Well, we've already agreed that alpha and beta are not scientific terms. So if you remove those terms, though, can you contend with this?
Right. Even someone who is the person who you posited, right? The person who is athletic and confident, right? The high school football quarterback, right? Versus the high school football nerd, right? Well, take those two people and then put them in a different situation, right? If those two people are like in gym class together, right? Of course, the high school quarterback is like on the top of that social interaction, right? Looking at the sort of, classic wolf pack model, they're the one who's sort of running the show, right? And the other guy's like hanging out in the bleachers, talking to his friends, right? Or talking to nobody because he's a beta in that situation, right? If you then take that kid and then you send that kid to like nationals, right, or whatever, and that kid, take the quarterback character, and he's suddenly like from the little podunk town, right? He's not from the big school. He's like way down on the totem pole, right? That person is no longer going to be in that high social hierarchy, right?
So when you do have a new situation, a new hierarchy will form. He's kind of disproving his own argument.
And if you take that nerd and you put that, take that kid, maybe he's the dungeon master of his, Dungeons and Dragons group, right? That kid is going to be the alpha in that situation, right? That's how humans work.
So you're comfortable making claims about how humans work. It sounds like because you just don't want those observations to be true, but you're happy to make your observations, claims of this is just how humans work.